Welcome, one and all, to Soren Narnia's Buffet of the Uncanny. Where's the echo effect? Where's the echo? Effect controls, audio effects, show all, delay and echo. Apply. Apply. Work! Work! Dear Mr. McCorkle, thank you for submitting your proposal and your patience while our report was compiled. We can appreciate your desire to bring this matter to a conclusion, especially with the people in your house wounded to various degrees, slowly going insane with fear, and your very life probably at risk. What we did was have our patented artificial intelligence bot, Dibby, analyze situations similar to yours, as depicted in 50 years' worth of horror films, true first-person anecdotes, and floor plans of various crawl spaces around the world to compile a database from which came a statistical profile of past moments when someone decided to track a mysterious thumping sound up there. We're sorry to say that Dibby's numbers are not indicative of a pleasant outcome to your specific situation. Our simulations suggest there is a 94% chance that the lifting of the board, which will reveal the heretofore unknown area above your ceiling, will result in the ghoulish death by supernatural forces of every remaining person in your household within 35 minutes, with a 22% chance that you and your family will have your bodies turned inside out. See data table F4. While this may happen anyway, as it sounds like the haunting has already progressed into what we call the wind machine and strobe lights phase, our data shows that if you refrain from the slightest peek into the crawl space, you will at least have made the phantasmagorical terrors above you do some legwork to track you down before having their accursed way with the souls of you and yours. In the haunted house field, we call this a lose-lose situation, and Dibby recommends you merely cower in the northeast corner of the basement and pray for release. Please note for the future that advanced knowledge of a spooky crawl space within your home provides a 20% increase in survival chances against vengeful ghosts, though Dibby's guidelines still suggest that living on a single level, without stairs, and vacating your house every night when the sun goes down are still the surest ways to avoid the costly unpleasantness of a mind-ripping, throat-clawing, fatal haunting. Happy holidays from Ellsworth Haunting Solutions. Please confirm your billing address below and use the prepaid envelope to send payment, making sure to write your phone number on your check. On October 12, 2018, dessert photographer David DeLube was driving home from a party on a remote, twisting country road near Americus, Georgia, when his car suddenly broke down. The cause was a simple lack of routine maintenance, specifically running out of transmission fluid. Instead of walking just across the road to a police station for assistance, he chose to approach a spooky, dark old mansion on a hill with a blood-stained door. Because, as he recalled later, I thought I smelled popcorn, so, I thought I might get lucky. What DeLube encountered inside that house changed him forever. They weren't just ordinary ghosts that came out of the walls, he wrote in A Fresh Coat of Evil, his best-selling memoir of the incident. They were more like were-ghosts, but where the wolf part would be, there was a dead pirate. When unearthly wind gusts started to tear through the hallways and glowing orange goo began to pour from a Wi-Fi router behind him, he ran screaming into the night, rescued only by chance when a busload of exorcists coming home from a group trip to Atlanta to see Hamilton almost ran him over. But though he had escaped almost certain goo, Dulube's haunting never really stopped. From that day on, he was utterly terrified of the prospect that his car might break down again someday because of his own negligence, making him again vulnerable to supernatural horrors. So skittish did he become, in fact, that he began taking his car to Jiffy Lube for their signature service quick oil change and safety check 2 times each day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Within 6 weeks, he had spent more than $1,200 on replacement cabin air filters alone, even when ChatGPT pointed out they did absolutely nothing. So disturbed did one Jiffy Lube staff member become by his maintenance obsession that he resorted to the unheard-of measure of being honest with Dulube about the state of his vehicle. Even the CEO wrote him a personal email pleading with him to cease his madness. But attached to that email, by pure habit, was a coupon for $8 off a signature service quick oil change and safety check. Today, locals are frightened of encountering what they call the fluid-level psycho at the Macon Town Center Jiffy Lube. "He almost looks kind of normal," one resident has said. But then you hear him talking to the dude at the counter about topping off his battery water or something, and his eyes get kind of spinny. There is a gnarled oak tree, the more superstitious townsfolk say, on which his old Jiffy Lube 3,000-mile reminder stickers accumulate one by one as if by a phantom hand. I forgot to say that the ghosts not only knew my name, but my banking information and social security number, poor David Dulube added in the epilogue to A Fresh Coat of Evil. Running out of that house with a nice hot bag of the best popcorn I ever tasted has been no consolation during my sleepless nights of knowing how easy it is to let your tire pressure get a little low. And even a little low, I tell you, could cost you your life. Good Lord, what an awkward moment. You know, everyone thinks all those Where Are They Now articles are hilarious, and people make fun of the has-beens who show up on reality shows. But when you actually come face to face with one of those celebrities, the truth is, it's just kind of sad. Wendy and I went to the Olive Garden in Shippensburg last night, and at first we couldn't believe our eyes. We were like, he's showing us to our table? He's handing us our menus and telling us our waiter will be with us shortly? We couldn't help but stare, and in hushed tones we confirmed to each other that this was no case of mistaken identity, like that time I mistook that yield sign on 450 for Kenneth Branagh. Halfway through our meal, our once famous restaurant host was refilling the salt shakers at the table beside us, when Wendy, tactless as usual, just came right out and asked him if he really was who we thought he was. Yeah, hi, he said, not really making eye contact. Sad. Hi, Wendy said. We both really liked you in that poem. The Raven smiled a little at that, but it was kind of an embarrassed smile. Why did she have to say anything? Thanks, he said. Then, like an idiot, I had opened my stupid mouth. Yeah, you were real scary, I said. I know, brilliant, right? The Raven mumbled something then. It might have been another word of thanks, I'm not sure. And then he went right back to filling the salt shakers. This was the same Raven whose eyes once had all the seeming of a demon's that was dreaming. Holy crap! That bird terrified generations, darkened the imaginations of millions. And here he was, long past his moment of glory, losing a few feathers here and there, his voice kind of reedy. We had heard his voice wasn't all that much in real life, but I want to tell you, it was R-E-E-D-Y. I can no more imagine him perching on that pallid bust of Pallas now than I can Clayton Kershaw actually getting his fastball up into the mid-90s again. Wendy and I eventually paid the check and left. On the way out, we noticed a couple of teenagers spot the Raven having a smoke with the kitchen staff out front. One of the kids giggled and yelled out, "Yo, Raven, tell us about the Claritin difference." Okay, it was a stupid commercial and a total sellout job on his part, but man, the Raven still deserves a little more respect than that. Anyway, the episode gave the whole night an odd vibe, and then I made it worse by choosing a bad moment to propose to Wendy. We sort of clipped an elderly pedestrian with a car on the way home, and a cop was giving Wendy a breathalyzer test, and I just decided to go for it right there. Time is a big, bendy river. That's the moral of that story. Yes, sir, indeed. Watch for those bends. They're more bendy for some than for others, but bendy is the word for them. Yeah. In 1961, Dr. Ephraim Bread realized his dream of building the world's first Museum of Candy Corn in Tallulah, Illinois. Created especially for children, the museum was an interactive shrine to all that is innocent and wondrous about the tasty candy that has delighted people of all ages since its invention by Julius Caesar during the rise of the Roman Empire. Housed in a colorful 3-room shed in Dr. Bread's spacious backyard, the museum opened its doors on June 7th, 1961, with free admission to all children. Smiles and laughter were evident on dozens of faces that parted the screen door on that sunny morning. Attendees were surrounded on all sides by orange, yellow, and white decor, in which the happy history of candy corn was taught through fun activities, films, and the jaunty, some would even say saucy, efforts of the candy corn dancers. However, the smiles and laughter became a torrent of screams and agony within just 18 minutes of the very first admission. The wooden roof supports of the building had not been adhered properly, and a gust of wind lifted the entire thing, sending it end over end into Dr. Bread's driveway, where it instantly killed 11 members of the New Zealand Candy Corn Consortium, who had driven all the way from Newmansville to be at the opening. At about that same moment, the candy corn painter, a machine 8 feet high and constructed to look like a treat-dispensing teddy bear, blew an O-ring and caused lava-hot food dye to spray uncontrollably in all directions, killing 4 reporters and an Australian shaman who had arrived to bless the museum. Just 5 seconds later, the candy corn dancers, having failed to perform a safety check on the more than 70 allegedly dead grenades they were in the middle of juggling on stage, all met a swift, explosive end when an unexpected change in barometric pressure inside the building detonated the devices all at once. As police and first responders descended on the property, it became obvious that the museum's first day might be its last, with its gift shop sales decimated by the chaos. Though the children were spared physically, it is believed the young witnesses suffered unquantifiable psychological damage. For example, not one ever went on to play tennis at a professional level. Tragically, what happened on that day in 1961 was not the only time a museum of candy corn has been the site of misadventure. The second such museum to be built, in Shawmut, Arizona in 1978, collapsed during construction when a chicken walking past the site inadvertently, or some believe intentionally, tripped a horrifically misplaced demolition wire. The third potential candy corn museum was rendered useless in 2002 when rival gangs took over the space by force in order to mount dueling productions of all that jazz. Since then, Congress has refused funding for candy corn museums on 32 separate occasions. Dr. Ephraim Bread himself went on to achieve minor redemption in 1984 when he invented and patented a new conjugation of 12 common verbs. The original site of his ill-fated museum is today an emergency pull-off ramp for overweight vehicles. You know the feeling. The feeling of being ashamed, inadequate, judged by others. You spend your days obsessing over a single mistake, your nights hearing the giggles, the mocking laughter in your mind. Well, guess what? You've done nothing wrong, and there is nothing to be ashamed of. And now, finally, there's a place you can come once a week to talk with others about how society views you and what you can do to make them stop. At our People Who Got Killed by the Mummy open talk forum, we don't dwell on the fact that you somehow got killed by the slowest moving monster in the entire pantheon of evil creatures. Instead, we'll turn the focus outward on those who mock you for your misfortune, and we'll come to see that it is they who should feel bad for their heartless attitude. Because you could have died in plenty of ways, smothered in a caterpillar attack, or crushed by a stalled car being pushed by two guys. It's nobody's business why your life ended, or how incredible it is that at no point you couldn't just take a few jogging steps to get away. When you were killed by the mummy, you didn't stop being a human being with thoughts and feelings. And because we respect who you are, we won't be forcing anyone to explain just how they screwed up so badly that a virtual still photo of a creature managed to take your life. The mummy may have moved really, really slowly when it killed you, but we're going to act fast to get your self-esteem back to normal. And along the way, you'll be making some good new friends who don't think your demise was funny. We meet every Thursday in the basement of St. Martin's Lutheran Church in Mulberry. Go through the front entrance and turn left and go down the hall. Then take the next 2 rights, go up the flight of stairs in front of you, and take the elevator to the 10th floor. When the doors open, head south across Concourse B and wait for the tram in the designated blue zone. The tram will be marked East/Express. Disembark at the 6th stop and proceed with caution down the widest of the 3 available corridors. The Hall of Valiance is at the end. It seats 40,000, so spread out. I think my problem was that I was basically typecast. Oh wait, let me get you another drink, beautiful. You've got to try the surfing cadaver. It'll knock your socks off. Anyway, you have to understand the whole politics of the industry and how casting directors work. So, no, I didn't really accept any other major parts after we shot Hitch's movie. Oh, yeah, he always insisted I call him Hitch during our discussions about the film. He let me improvise. We had a good time. I mean, I was looking to get out of acting anyway. The hours were brutal. I was away from my girlfriend a lot. And I'm the kind of guy who really believes in romance and working at a relationship, I didn't want potential fame to erode our love. So, for the last few years, I've just been doing the usual things. Picking along the ground for stuff to eat. Flying here and there. Migrating when the time's right. Blah, blah, blah. I figure when a part really speaks to me, I'll get back in the game. I turned down a lot of bird roles, of course, because I want to expand my range, really craft my art, But yeah, to make a long story short, I definitely consider myself still in the business. And I'm sure that if you and I spent some more time together, I could get a sense of your essence, and maybe I could talk to some people, people I still know over at Warner's. Maybe if we had dinner a couple of times. Oh, I remember when we were shooting the scene at the end where I attacked Tippi Hedren. I should explain that what happened during the scene was that Hitch told me I was actually commanding too much presence. So he asked me if I could hang back, which is why I'm only on the edge of the screen and for like a second and a half. He wanted me to kind of nurture the other birds along. They kind of looked up to me. Hey, did that guy over near the pinball machine just drop part of his sandwich? Sorry, I'm just going to go check that out real quick. Don't you go anywhere. I want to tell you how I got into the part. I actually flew all the way to Vegas and back with a group of birds undergoing treatment for rabies just to master the character. What? No, I don't think that's Sidney Poitier over there. Well, I wouldn't bother going over. I know Sidney pretty well, and he's really not very. Okay. On December 12th, 2022, Father Thomas Chingerling of Westport, Connecticut, tensely approached a house in Busan, South Korea, for the purposes of conducting an exorcism. The victim of the possession was a 19-year-old K-pop sensation named Babyto, real name Jung Jae-un, whose chart-topping hits included Heart Like a Dorito, But Not a Tostito, and Canceling My Free Trial of Your Love. Babyto had exhibited terrifying signs of possession for months, starting innocuously enough with a sudden overfondness for pancakes, and escalating to a moment when Satan contorted his body into the shapes of 4 of the 5 major vowels. Little did Father Chingerling know that the exorcism would drag on well into the new year, with Satan tirelessly dodging and weaving from the old priest's attempts to cast him out of Babyto. Nothing seemed to work, and Babyto grew weaker and weaker. Neither holy water nor Latin incantations, nor the assistance of the Vatican's efficient new exorcism app could repel the Dark Master. Finally, looking around the dark, gloomy room where the struggle had been taking place for weeks, a novel idea entered the mind of Reverend Kathy Kimbley of Ontario. She made the bold suggestion to simply break the atmosphere. The bleak, existential terror of the situation, she reasoned, could not maintain its terrifying grip if certain unexpected elements were introduced into it. To that end, she purchased at Dollar General a small rotating disco light and assembled a unique Spotify playlist. When Walk the Moon's 2014 hit Shut Up and Dance began to blare through her Bluetooth speakers into the room where Babyto lay suffering, Father Chingerling understood at once the genius of creating an atmosphere so absurd that true evil simply could not coexist with it. Over the next several hours, Babyto was left alone with high-decibel teen anthems such as Hot and Cold by Katy Perry, and even more jarring, the Friday song by Rebecca Black. Further inappropriate and very loud selections corrupting the gravity of the setting followed, like Bop and Barry Manilow's Copacabana. By dawn, Satan found it too weird to be in the room anymore, unable to effectively consume a human soul, while a song like Barbie Girl by Danish-Norwegian dance pop group Aqua was filling the air. With the situation's internal logic completely shattered, the devil fled from the scene. He had not accounted for, and had no plan for, utter silliness. Since that incident in 2022, he has only felt up to possessing a small dehumidifier located in the waiting room of a dental office in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. It has been unplugged and placed inside a closet. Dearest children, I welcome you to my modest trailer, and I thank you for your participation in my child's birthday celebration. I know that Stumper thanks you as well, and I must say that never in his 8 years on this earth has he seemed more jocund than at this time, surrounded by his closest well-wishers. In a few moments, we will conclude this wonderful gathering by motoring across town to Faceburger, where I hope we can all share a warm and nutritious luncheon. But I think it only fair to warn you of the possible consequences of misbehaving in a public restaurant. I'm certain that you, my son's fine playfellows, would never dream of such behavior. But, as I say, there are things that must be spoken of. It all happened on my child's 7th birthday, just 1 year ago today. That day was as bright and jubilant as any I have ever known. On that day, too, my wife and myself took Stumper and the children in the Pacer to Faceburger, a favorite bistro of my son's, and I know one of yours. All was going well when we ordered our nutriment and sat down with the 9 priceless tots round the table. It seemed to be the end to a perfect day. But then, all went nightmarishly wrong. I blame myself, of course. Had I only warned those children of the dangers of rambunctious deportment in a public custom house, perhaps some of them might have been saved. As it was, we all got halfway through our meals when a small boy of 9 named Bip began to argue with his little pal Frankie about the median length of each other's French fried potatoes. I admonished the children and beseeched them to be silent, but they would not listen. Soon the shenanigans increased twofold, spreading from child to child. Hair was pulled. Yes, meat was thrown. Several of the children began to run in meaningless concentric circles, and this miscreantic horseplay is what prompted the attack of the most fearsome creature known to childkind, the great purple snagdurple. The snagdurple, a Lovecraftian Dybbuk with the body of Winnie the Pooh and the head of a Cloverfield, burst without caveat through a side wall of Faceburger, catching us all unawares, sending the restaurant staff fleeing for cover. Instantly the carnage began. Bip, the child who had seemingly started it all, was scooped off the floor and decapitated with one snapping of the creature's lusty jaws. Dark blood spouted in a pulpy river from the stump of his neck, while inside the snagdurple's cavernous mouth his saliva-slicked head begged for forgiveness. 2 young twin brothers, Emo and Zeb, I believe were their names, were trampled into stinking ichor by the snagdurple's barbed feet. Their teeth were scattered like shrapnel. Little Emo, who just days before had been the happiest of boys, having found on the street an autographed photo of the First Lady of the American Theater, Miss Helen Hayes, was also one of my son's closest confidants. There was nothing left of him to identify but a spleen torn messily in half, its severed veins having nowhere to pump their gushing bounty. Darling Trishie was next, Trishie whose pigtails had been captured in many an adorable photograph. I last remember seeing her brain sucked from her skull like a rancid prune and inhaled through one of the monster's steaming nostrils. Oh, foul Abaddon! But what could I do? I had thought the children might understand what were the consequences of tomfoolery. I took my wife and Stumper in my arms and made for daylight while all around me unfolded a hellish spectacle of bloody violence. The shouts, the shrieks, The cubulant sound of eyes and tongues slapping wetly off the weeping walls. I don't know how I managed to regain my senses long enough to call for an airstrike, which transformed the building and some of the slower customers into a seething mass of fire and ash. Where is the Snagdurple today? No one knows. Perhaps he lies in wait around the corner of the nearest hamburger foodery, waiting for one child to call another a boogerhead, to order lots of food and then not eat it, to raise his or her voice just one tiny decibel too high. Dear children, I know that you are of a maturity far beyond your years, and that I have nothing to fear now. Still, I beg you, let the killing stop. Let us go now to the vehicle and begin the last phase of this day. If you gawky little gutter snipes are all good, perhaps the afternoon will begin a new, safer era. And perhaps there will later be an hour of Transformers time for all. Thank you for enduring this outlier episode of the podcast. What better time to remind you of the existence of the Knifepoint Horror merchandise shop, which some critics are unkindly calling an irredeemable capitalist monstrosity, typical of craven podcasters. Well, fee on them. A quarter of all proceeds from the shop will be donated to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. I hope you get a chuckle from the offerings at knifepointhorror.dashery.com.
Knifepoint Horror fabric softener has been classified as a hazardous product by the United States Commission on Citizen Safety.